So you're ready to dive into home ownership. Huge congrats. It's such an amazing ride. But let's face it, it can feel like you're navigating through a maze, sometimes completely blindfolded.
Right.
You're there on Pinterest pinning dream kitchens. You're figuring out where the good schools are. But in all that excitement, there's one thing that might not even be on your radar. Floodplains.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, getting a handle on this one thing could save you so many headaches down the line.
Absolutely.
Not to mention a whole lot of cash.
Yeah,
But don't sweat it. You've got us here to break it all down.
that's right.
Today, we're really going to deep dive into this whole world of floodplains. We've got a super practical homeowner's guide to help us out, and this blog post that's packed with good stuff specifically for, future homeowners.
What always gets me is how often this whole floodplain thing just slips right past people when they're buying a home. They get so caught up in the, excitement of finding that perfect spot. All those little details, the ones that really matter in the long run, they just kind of get lost in the shuffle.
It's like getting ready for a marathon and totally spacing on packing water, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A tiny oversight that can have some major consequences.
100%.
So before we get lost in all the jargon and technical terms, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What even is a floodplain?
Imagine like a giant sponge just chilling next to a river along the coast. That's basically your floodplain.
Okay.
When you've got those crazy heavy rains or rivers decide to overflow these areas, they're like nature's overflow tank. They just soak up all that extra water.
That makes sense, but how does this whole sponge idea actually apply to me, potentially signing on the dotted line for a mortgage?
Okay, so picture this. You found it that dream Victorian house you've always wanted, wrap-around porch, white picket fence, the whole shebang.
Love it.
But then you find out this charming little number is smack dab in the middle of a floodplain.
Oh, no.
And suddenly, that dream home could mean paying double or even triple the insurance costs compared to a similar house outside the floodplain.
Ouch. So we're not talking about just like a small price difference here.
Yeah.
This could be a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Exactly. And it's not even just about insurance. You're suddenly dealing with all these special building regulations and restrictions on what you can and can't even do with your own property.
Yeah.
It's all about managing risk in areas where flooding is a thing.
So it's not just about whether your basement's going to turn into a swimming pool. It's about all these rules and regulations tied to being in that zone.
And speaking of things, homeowners really need to be aware of. Our handy-dandy guide lays out this floodplain checklist. And let me tell you, there were some serious eye-openers in there. The first one that really jumped out at me was how being in a floodplain can actually affect how much you can sell your house for down the line.
Yeah.
Who knew?
It's a big deal, and it's something people often don't even think about. Buyers, especially the ones who've done their homework, they might not be so keen on properties in areas that are prone to flooding, which obviously limits your pool of potential buyers if you decide to sell later on. Right. That's a really good point. So it's not just about your needs and your budget right now. You got to think long-term about how this decision could affect you years down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've got potentially higher insurance costs, possible resale issues. What else should homeowners be thinking about when it comes to these special building regulations you mentioned? What do those even look like?
So these regulations, they're there for a reason. It's not about making life difficult for homeowners. It's about keeping everyone safe.
Of course.
These codes, they might dictate what kind of materials you can use, how high your foundation needs to be, even where you can put electrical systems.
Interesting.
It's all about minimizing the potential damage and risk if and when a flood happens.
So it's almost like floodplains come with their own set of building rules, just a whole other layer of things to think about when you're picturing yourself finally ripping out that old carpet.
Exactly.
It's all starting to make sense now.
Good.
I'm getting there.
Okay. And this is where I think that blog post really hit on something important. Living near a floodplain isn't just about, will my house float away? It's about understanding all the little ways it can affect you as a homeowner.
Right. So it's about the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about whether or not you'll need a pair of rain boots. It's about more than that. Think of it this way. You find this cute bungalow perfect yard for your prize-winning flowers, right?
Sounds nice.
But little do you know, this little piece of paradise is right next door to a floodplain. So now, on top of all the regular joys of owning a home, you've got this whole other layer of stuff to consider.
Like what? Give me an example. What does this actually look like for someone living in a floodplain?
Okay, so imagine. You're finally ready to renovate that old bathroom, right?
Sure.
But because of the whole flood risk thing, there were all these local rules about what materials you can even use. So suddenly, that spa-like bathroom you were dreaming of might need a little adjusting.
Oh,
Or maybe you decide to sell in a few years. But then you find out buyers are kind of hesitant because of the whole flood history of the neighborhood. And that could end up affecting how much you can sell for.
Wow. So it really affects everything. It's not just about that one big scary event. It's about
Right.
how floodplains can really throw a wrench in your plans
Exactly.
and even mess with your peace of mind a little bit.
It's about those unexpected costs and limitations and even anxieties that can just pop up when you least expect it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to see why understanding all this is so important. It's like you think you're just picking out paint colors, but really you're dealing with this whole other level of stuff.
Yes, exactly. And that's why being informed is super important.
Right.
Both of our sources really emphasize how important it is to tap into those community resources. It's not just about reacting after a flood, it's about being proactive and informed.
Right. Yeah. The guide actually called it your secret weapon, which I kind of love.
Yeah.
So what kind of resources are we talking about here?
Well, for one thing, your community might have like dedicated emergency response teams who are trained specifically for flood situations.
Okay.
They're prepared, they know the area like the back of their hand, and they're there to help if things go south.
That's reassuring, knowing there are people ready to jump in if needed.
Right, exactly. And beyond that, a lot of communities also offer resources you can access beforehand.
Okay.
Think like evacuation routes that are clearly marked, designated shelters that are set up and ready to go if needed, even support services to help people navigate all the aftermath of a flood, like filing insurance claims or finding financial assistance.
So it's about having a plan, not just stacking sandbags when the storm hits.
Right.
It's about knowing what's out there, what resources you have, and how to get to them if you need to.
Exactly. It's about being prepared, having that knowledge and support system in place. It can make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. It's like having a roadmap before you even set foot outside, right? Knowing where those resources are and who to call if things get dicey, that's huge. It's almost like instead of being terrified of floodplains, we can figure out how to live with them a bit better.
Exactly. It's about shifting that mindset from fear to preparation. And it all starts with knowing your stuff.
Right.
Don't be shy about reaching out to local officials or checking out your community's website. You can even just chat up some folks who've lived in the area for a while. You'd be surprised what you can learn.
Because sometimes those official flood maps don't give you the full picture, right?
Exactly. Those local folks, they have all the inside knowledge.
Right.
Someone might remember a flood that never even made it onto the official records. Or they might know from experience which areas tend to get hit worse than others.
It's like getting the inside scoop on the neighborhood. Intel you just wouldn't find anywhere else.
Exactly.
So let's say I'm about to jump into this whole house hunting thing. What's one solid step I can take right now, having learned all this about floodplains?
Besides checking out all the open houses and, sampling the local coffee scene,
Yeah, gotta scope out the good coffee.
I'd say go a step beyond those basic flood maps.
Uh,
Talk to people who've actually lived in the area for a while. Maybe even reach out to the building department and ask them about the history of flooding in specific neighborhoods.
So arm yourself with information, not just a pre-approval letter and a tape measure.
Exactly. The more you know about the flood risk in a particular area, the better decisions you'll be able to make.
And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Making informed decisions that are right for you. So listeners, we hope this deep dive into the world of floodplains has been helpful and maybe even a little empowering. It might seem like a small piece of the puzzle when you're thinking about buying a house. But as we've learned, understanding this one factor can make a world of difference in your future happiness as a homeowner.
Absolutely.
So do your research, ask questions, and make sure you're making the best choices for you. Happy house hunting, everyone.